Okay, so actually, there was one little piece before the Mishnah I'm seeing that we didn't review. One small piece over there where it mentioned Rabbi Yochanan says very powerful a concept that he says, "Woe to the goyim that they destroyed and they didn't know what they destroyed." Because when the Beis Hamikdash was around, the Mizbeach atoned for them and it gave them rainwater and produce. And now that they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, who is atoning for them? Meaning, like they didn't realize, they were ruining it. They thought they're ruining it for us, and really they ruined it for themselves. And how foolish they were to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. They thought they were winning by hurting us. Really, they hurt themselves because in the time of the Beis Hamikdash, when we have a Beis Hamikdash, we're able to bring sacrifices for the Goyim, 70 sacrifices on Sukkot. And it brings them blessing, a rainwater. B'chag nidonim alamayim, on Sukkot, we're judged on the water. So all those sacrifices bring the Goyim great blessing. And then they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. They destroyed their own blessings. They thought they were hurting us, and they're hurting themselves. Now, the Mishnah, the next Mishnah that we really did, the Mishnah talks about the general laws of the Mishmaros, the groups of Kayanim that were divided up to 24 groups, and they would do the service for a week for 1 week. And then after the 24 groups were finished, after 24 weeks, then they would start over another 24. In other words, it would be in order 24, there were groups of 24 groups, and they would go in that order. And then when they finished, they would start all over again from the beginning of the first one of the 24 groups. And I mentioned to you that it's the names of each of these groups is mentioned in the book of Divrei Hayamim, in the book of Chronicles, chapter 24, the book of Chronicles 1, Divrei Hayamim Aleph, and chapter 24, and it goes through all of the 24 names of the groups. These were basically families that the Kayanim were divided up into. They all were part of one of these big families. And the Mishnah talks about what happens on the Yom Tov versus on a regular week. Regular week was obviously that group of Kayanim did the service, and they enjoyed the fringe benefits as well. And then on Yom Tov, what changed? In other words, what were the rules on Yom Tov, and to what extent were the general Kayanim from around the world, what were they eligible for on Yom Tov? So the Mishnah says that 3 times a year, all the Mishmaros were equal. They were all equal, meaning they all were able to benefit from participating, not only to receive, but to participate in the actual bringing of the sacrifices that were connected to the Yom Tov. And they would also have, in addition to the sacrifices that were connected to Yom Tov, that they were able to participate in bringing and in enjoying the meat, and also getting the hide of the burnt offerings and so on. So in addition to all that, they also would get the chiluk lechem apanim. They would also benefit from the distribution of the showbread. So they got, number one, the holiday offerings. Everyone, all the Kayanim were able to participate in them. And when you participate in a sacrifice, you also get the benefits of that sacrifice, meaning if you're eligible to participate in bringing the sacrifice, you also get the portions of that sacrifice that are divided by the Kayanim. You get a portion of that. So they got the merit of participating in the sacrifices. They also got the benefits of the portions of the sacrifices. And in addition to that, they also got something that they shouldn't have, seemingly, which was not connected to the holiday, and that is the lechem hapanim, the showbread. The showbread, they were able to benefit from the distribution of the showbread. They got a portion of it. The lechem hapanim is interesting, has an interesting blessing to it, where it says that it would have a miracle happen, that you would eat a drop of it and you would be completely satisfied. That was some miracle that would happen with the lechem hapanim. So because of that, at least it's brought down in the commentaries, one of the commentaries brings down that that was the reason why they could divide it up and divide it into tiny portions to give every single person lechem hapanim, and everyone benefited. They all felt fully satisfied from eating a small piece of the lechem hapanim, of the showbread. Now, the Mishnah doesn't explain that. That's one of the commentaries mentions that. The Mishnah just mentions that everyone would get a portion of the showbread. Now, the showbread was not specifically connected to the holiday. So that's why I say it was like a sort of a unique law that should not have been. In other words, you shouldn't have gotten a portion of the lechem hapanim. That should have gone to the people of that watching that was connected to the week that the holiday fell in. That those people should be the ones getting the lechem hapanim. And instead, the Mishnah tells us that, believe it or not, there's a special law here that the lechem hapanim would go to all the kohanim. All the kohanim could benefit from the lechem hapanim. And the Gemara will learn it from a pasuk. It was learned from there's a pasuk that brings out that they get a portion of that eating, of the something that was specifically given out for eating, and that was the lechem hapanim, and they would all get a portion of that. Tosfos brings out over here that it's not that the kohanim were allowed to participate in the workings, in the service of the showbread. That's not that they weren't given an option for. They did not get a part in doing the service that involved the showbread. All they got from the showbread was the eating of it. That with regard to eating of the showbread, they were able to get it. It was distributed to the visiting kohanim from around the world. They were able to partake of the showbread. And this was a special law, as I say, because it was not specifically connected to the showbread is not something unique to the holidays. There are many sacrifices that are unique to the holidays that we understand is supposed to be given to all the kohanim, get a part of that. But here the showbread is not specifically connected to the holidays, and yet, surprisingly enough, it was distributed to all the kohanim from around the world. And all the mishmaros were equal in this, that they were all eligible for it. And then the Mishnah says that on Shavuos, the kohanim would get the matzah, meaning the showbread, and a portion of the chametz bread, which was called the shtei halechem, that was the Shavuos bread. So the kohanim got a portion of each. And the Mishnah spells it out to the extent that it says, Oimer loy, which there are different understandings in the commentaries. One of them is that it means that the kohen who was distributing it to each individual kohen, he would tell each one, this is matzah, and then afterwards he would give the chametz, and he would say, this is chametz. In other words, this is your portion of the matzah, meaning the showbread, which was made with the rules of matzah. It was not considered chametz. And the shtei halechem, the two breads of Shavuos, they were actually made with chametz. They were made with flour, with wheat flour. They were made with chametz. They were obviously not brought on the altar because you're not allowed to bring chametz on the altar. But kol sa'ar v'chol dvash lo saktiru mimeno, it says you're not allowed to bring any sa'ar, any leaven. But the shtei halechem was brought it was brought in the Beis Hamikdash, and the sacrifices that were connected to the Shtei Alechem were brought on the altar. And the Shtei Alechem, the two breads, they were given. These were chametz breads. They were distributed to the kohanim, and they were distributed to all the kohanim. All the kohanim, even the ones that it wasn't their week, they would get a portion. So they got a portion of the matzah bread, which is the show bread, and they got a portion of the shtei alechem, which was the chametz bread, on Shavuos. And the kohen would tell each of them, this is matzah and this is chametz. Why would they do that? So the understanding is that they wanted to bring out 2 points. One is that you're not allowed to trade. You can't trade kachim and say, okay, you'll take the chametz, you'll take the matzah, you'll take the showbread, I'll take the chametz. No, it was specifically they gave to each one because you weren't allowed to sort of substitute one for the other, trade off one for the other. The commentaries discuss, was this because it's not respectful to kachim to trade it, or was it because kachim has no monetary value? You can't, it doesn't have a din bailus, it doesn't have an ownership law where you own it, so you can't go and trade it. The commentaries discuss what the exact reason behind this is. It might be because of respect, that it's disrespectful to go and trade off. Oh, you're going to give away, you trade off kachim, holy things. So, but the point here is that the kohen would give each individual, give him matzah, and give him the matzah, meaning the showbread, and give him chametz, meaning the shtei halechem from the two breads. And the kohen would be told, like, you're getting both. It's not something that we can trade. In addition to that, the recipient rested assured when he found out that one is the showbread, one is the matzah bread, that he rested assured that he got both. In other words, it was to relax the kohen, to know the kohen who received it should know that he is getting one of each. And then there's a third understanding here, third point. In other words, one point was the kohen would know not to trade it. Another point was that the kohen would know that he got one of each. And then there's a third, an alternative understanding here that sort of changes the pshat a little, changes the understanding and the wording, where it's oimer loy is the on Shavuos, the distributor of the shtei halechem, of the showbread, and the distributor of the the distributor of the lechem apanim, the showbread, and the distributor of the shtei halechem, the two chametz breads of Shavuos, that distributor would give it to the heads of each mishmar. So again, there's 24 mishmaris, 24 watches, 24 groups, and each one had a head of that group. And the guy who gave it, the kohen that gave it to the heads of each group, he would tell the head of the group, the Rosh Mishmar, he would tell him that, by the way, make sure not to distribute this and switch off. Give everyone a piece. And that was what the Mishnah is saying. This is matzah, this is chametz. Give every single person a piece. So it's not that they would tell each individual kohen, this is chametz, this is matzah. No, he would tell the person in charge that make sure that every person, every kohen should get a portion. Okay, so however you learn, the main point, the point is that everyone got a portion of the chametz and of the matzah, and the matzah first, and then the chametz, I should say, because the matzah is tadir, more often. The lechem apanim was every week of the year, and the shtei halechem was once a year on Shavuos. And then the Mishnah then says,
and where was it supposed to be? The shtei halechem, was it in the Beis Hamikdash or in Yerushalayim, or?
I believe both had to be eaten in the Beis Hamikdash, but I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look it up. I believe both in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the Mishnah concludes and says, maybe that's where, I don't know if we did that. Let's do that now inside. Let's read it inside.
Question.
Yes.
During the holidays, was there a specific group that did the holiday because it was part of their week, or did all the 24 mishmarot send people to participate in the holiday?
You know, and I didn't really understand. Is it that they send people, or did they go
But
themselves? Is that your
during
question? Did everyone go themselves, or did they send
during the
people? Or
during the holiday falls within a particular week.
right,
Therefore, there is a mishmar that is responsible for that week.
right.
Okay? So my question very simply is, during the holiday, did the mishmar that was assigned for that week, were they the only ones that were working in the Beit HaMikdash? Or did all 24 mishmarot come in, or their representatives come in to participate for the Shalosh Galim for that particular week?
Okay, so our Mishnah actually is right, perfect question, because that's exactly what our Mishnah is talking about, and our Mishnah says that for 3 times a year, all the Mishmaris were equal in the holiday stuff, on all the holiday sacrifices. Not only that, they also were equal in the lechem hapanim, the showbread. All the other sacrifices that were not connected to the holidays, and of course, besides for the lechem hapanim, the showbread, those sacrifices were specifically for the mishmar, that it was their week to do the service. So depends on what the sacrifice was, basically. If it's a holiday sacrifice, everyone participates. If it's a specific, if it's like a daily sacrifice, or not connected to the holiday, just a person brought his own donation sacrifice that he was holding on to, and he finally came to the Beis HaMikdash, so he brought it along, and that is not divided by all the kohanim. That goes specifically to the mishmar, who its week is. And so the first half of the Mishnah talks about the holiday offerings. And now the final sentence of the Mishnah is about the non-holiday offerings, which are going to be specifically for that mishmar, that it's their job that week.
Now, the 24 mishmarot that do come in, is it the entire group that comes in, or is it a representative?
Every single kohen is eligible.
Okay.
So the Mishnah concludes. Actually, now I remember we did do actually the final. We did the final sentence of the Mishnah. Yeah. So the Mishnah says Mishmar shes manoi kavua, the Mishmar that their time was that week. So that Mishmar, that watching, that group brings the Tamidin, the daily sacrifices, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. They're called the Tamid Shel Shachar, Tamid Shel Bein Harbayim. That's the burnt offerings, the korban oila, the lamb in the morning, a lamb in the afternoon. And they would also bring that week's mishmar, would also bring the nedarim and nedavais, the donation sacrifices. And I mentioned on Friday that the difference between a neder and a nedava is not a very big difference. It's both of them are donations. One of them is that you commit to bringing a sacrifice. You say, Harei alai, I am going to bring a oila. And the nedava is, I say on a specific animal, this is Harei zu oila. This is an oila. And the difference in halacha between the two is what happens if that animal gets lost. So if you said Harei alai oila, I'm going to bring an oila, and then you decide this is your sacrifice for the oila, if it gets lost, you're still going to need to bring another one because you committed to bring an oila. This one ran away. You're going to have to bring another one. But if you specifically say, this is my oila, harei zu oila, this is my oila, that's a nedava, that's a donation sacrifice that you specified it's this animal. So if it gets lost, you don't have an obligation on you to go bring another one. This is the animal that you donated. You didn't donate you didn't pledge more than this animal. You only pledge this animal. You didn't pledge a monetary amount or a sacrifice on you. You pledged this animal is an idol. Okay, it got lost, whatever. It's a Beis Hamikdash. Wherever it is, it's not mine. It's the Beis Hamikdash's. I can't find it. Okay, but it's I'm not going to be obligated. So that's the difference between a neder and a nedava. Now those donations they used to bring on the holidays. Why would they bring regular donations? I donated it in the month of Shvat, and I bring it on Pesach. I come to the Beis Hamikdash on Pesach. Why am I bringing it then? I should have brought it in Shvat. Well, on a very simple level.
You weren't there in Shvat.
Wasn't in Yerushalayim. It's very easy to bring it when I go anyway to the Beis Hamikdash. I'm traveling there for the Shloisha Regalim, so I'll bring it then. Is it called a holiday sacrifice? Does it get? I'm bringing it then. Now I'll tell you even more. There's a mitzvah to bring it on the first holiday that comes up. There's a mitzvah to not push it off after that. It should be brought by that time, by the first holiday. That's when I should bring it. And it's based on a pasuk, it's a pasuk. It's a mitzvah saseh. It's a positive commandment to bring the sacrifice as early as possible, at least by the holiday that arrives, which would be, let's say, Pesach. I donated it in Shvat, the month of January, whatever, and now I'm bringing it on Pesach in the month of April, because that's the first of the 3 holidays that arrives. I have a positive obligation to bring it by then. I have a mitzvah loisase. There's also a negative commandment that don't wait 3 holidays to bring it. But the positive mitzvah is to bring it on the first holiday. And so what did I do? I'm coming Pesach. I brought the sacrifice with me that I had pledged. I pledged the sacrifice. Now I'm bringing it with me. Now, would you call that a holiday sacrifice? Because in a certain sense, I'm obligated to bring it by this holiday. There's a mitzvah, positive commandment, that it has to be brought by this holiday. So there's room to think that that might be called a holiday sacrifice, because it's a sacrifice that you normally bring on the holiday, and there's a mitzvah to bring it by that holiday. And so it's logical that maybe it could be considered a holiday sacrifice. The Mishnah comes and lets us hear, no, this is not called a holiday sacrifice. You did have a positive commandment to bring it by this holiday, and it makes sense that you're bringing it during the holiday, but nevertheless, it's not called a holiday sacrifice. This will be a sacrifice that only the mishmar of that week will bring, because it's not really a holiday sacrifice. A holiday sacrifice is a sacrifice that's obligatory, part of the holiday mitzvahs, and this is not part of the holiday mitzvahs, and therefore it will be brought by the group, the mishmar, the watching, that is specifically for this week that the holiday falls out in. Now, the Mishnah also mentions Shar Karbanas Sibur, the other communal sacrifices. Again, besides the Karban Tamid that it already mentioned, it mentions other sacrifices that are communal. And it also says, Vumakriv esakol, and he also brings all sacrifices. That group, in other words, the group that it's their mishmar this week, and the holiday happens to fall during this week, that group, that specific one group of the 20 from the 24, only that group, that group brings the nedarim, the davos, the donation sacrifices. They bring the tamidin, which was the daily sacrifices, and they bring the Shar Karbanas Tzibur, other communal sacrifices, again, that are not connected to the holiday, and Makriv Esakol, they bring everything. The Gemara is going to explain what these refer to, the Shar Karbanas Tzibur, other communal sacrifices, and what does it mean, Makriv Esakol? It brings everything. There's obviously some other sacrifices that the Mishnah is including here, and mentioning that that the koyanim of that mishmar specifically would bring. Okay, now comes the Gemara. We're gonna do this inside now. This is a new piece, page 55b. We are 5 lines up from the bottom of the page. Emurei haragolim. The emurim is an interesting word, because the commentaries discuss what does it refer to? What is the imurim? Generally, well, we know what it refers to, but how does it come from that word? In other words, what's the etymology of that word to mean this? What the imurim always refer to the parts of the sacrifice that would be brought on the altar. They're called the imurim. But where does the word imurim come from? So one understanding is that from the word moira, the teacher, like the master, the master. This was the important part of the sacrifice that's brought on the altar. It's like it's the more authoritative part, the important part that goes to Hashem. And because of that, it's called the emurim, the part that goes to Hashem. Another meaning of emurim is from the word amar, which means the one that was stated, meaning that these are the parts of the sacrifice that the Torah states, the Torah talks to bring, put on the altar. So the word emurim are the ones that are stated in the Chumash about bringing on the altar. So the term emurim, those that were talked about in the Chumash, to be brought on the altar, that's where the word comes from, emurim. And then there's another meaning of amar, which is es Hashem ha'amarta hayom. You have today praised Hashem. The word amar sometimes means praise. We've seen it also in the Orach Chaim HaKadosh. Often likes that, often mentions that whenever it says vayomer in the Chumash, he often says that it's referring to the meaning of amar, not just said, but a special praise, that the Yidden are praised and Hashem is praised. That's Hashem ha'amarta hayom. Hashem, you praised today. Hashem ha'emircha hayom. Hashem praised you today. It's talking about the Yidden. It says that in the Tefillin of Hashem. It says Hashem ha'emircha hayom, that Hashem puts in his Tefillin praise for the Jewish people. So the word Amar could mean praise. So the emurim would be from that word, that it means the special or the praised parts of the korban, and the praise, and so that's the word emurim. Now the Gemara says, if you look at our Mishnah, the Mishnah says that all the mishmaros were equal in the emurei haragolim. In the emurim, which means something to do with the sacrifice, the general meaning of it is the stuff that was brought on the altar. That's the general meaning. It refers to the items of the sacrifice that were the organs of the sacrifice that were brought on the altar. That's the general meaning of emurim, and for various reasons why it means that. The things that it says, Omar, Ha'amarta, or because of the word Moira, however you want to you understand the etymology, but emurim always means the stuff that's brought on the altar. And the Gemara asks, Emurei haragolim shall gavayaninu. These emurim are supposed to be for Hashem. They're supposed to be the stuff that's burnt. And our Mishnah is saying that all the mishmaros are equal, meaning that they get a portion of it, meaning they're able to eat it. So how could the Mishnah talk about emurim and talk about all the mishmaros being eligible to eat it when it actually, you're saying emurim, which generally means what's brought on the altar? That's not something that they divide up with regard to eating. So the Gemara asks, Emurei regolim is shel gavayanin. That's for Hashem. That's not something that they're going to be dividing up. Amar Rav Chizda, Masha Omor B'regolim. The word emurim here is not the typical word emurim. The word emurim here just means what was stated about the holidays, that there are certain sacrifices that you get a portion from. That is divided by the Koyanim. All the Koyanim get a portion, not just the Koyanim of the Mishmar, but all Koyanim will get a portion of those items. And we're calling those emurim. Again, it's not the common meaning. The common meaning emurim is that which was brought on the altar. And here we're translating it to mean that which is stated about the regalim, the emurim, that what's mentioned in the regalim, that you divide portions. And Rashi spells out which portions is it talking about. It's talking about the chazeh v'shoik of the Shalmei Chagiga, the special holiday sacrifices. What are they? Well, every person would bring a korban oila, which was called an oilas re'iyah, and a korban, which was called a chagiga, which was a shlamim, a peace offering, called the chagiga, holiday sacrifice. So there was the burnt offering called the oilas re'iyah, the oila, the burnt offering that was because you're seeing, you're being seen and seeing. It's called the oilas re'iyah for being seen and seeing in Yerushalayim, in the Beis Hamikdash, and that's the korban, the burnt offering called the re'iyah, and you had a shalmei chagiga, peace offering for the holiday. We know the chagiga because when we have the egg on the plate,
Seder.
the Seder plate. So what do we have there? We have a shank bone or a neck of a chicken, and that's commemorating the korban Pesach, the Paschal offering. And then next to it, we have a korban chagiga, a holiday offering that commemorates the holiday offering. It's an egg that commemorates the korban chagiga. Now, every holiday they would bring a shalmei chagiga. You would bring a chagiga offering. You would bring a oilas re'iyah, a burnt offering, and so therefore the holiday division, the dividing that was done for to all the koyanim were these portions from these two sacrifices. Now, what would they get from a burnt offering? This is what you can't eat any of it; it's all burnt. The answer is you would get the hide of the burnt offering. The hide was divided by the koyanim. Normally, someone brings a burnt offering, so it's nice. You get a proportion of the hide from your mishmar. Now it's the holiday. Now during the holiday, you're divided by all the koyanim. Now the good thing is there's a lot of them. So even though it's being divided by all the koyanim, but you sure got a huge amount of hides. So it's I guess that was quite valuable then during to participate in the sacrifices on the holidays. You got a night, probably the whole Bnei Yisrael was bringing hides, and they were given to how many koyanim are there? A very small percentage, 10% of koyanim, and they're getting, each person got 10, maybe 100 hides, right? There's probably 10%. But I'm saying percentage-wise, 10%, you got 90% of the hides. Right? Does that make sense? Something like that. But every kohen got a nice percentage of the hides. Okay. Now, and then from the shalmei chagiga, from the peace offering, what would they get? The chazav v'shaik. They would get the breast and the thigh. So that was also a portion that they got from all of those shalmei chagigas. Now, there also was something called the shalmei simcha. There was the peace offering of joy. Why doesn't Rashi mention that? Now, shlamim peace offering, a lot of it is eaten. We're only mentioning the breast, the shaik, the chazeh, breast, and the shaik and the thigh. We're only mentioning those two things. What about all the rest that was eaten? The rest was eaten.
The guy who brought it.
The guy who brought it. The guy who brought it ate the rest, and his family and his friends, whatever. But the koyanim got this portion of it. So the peace offering was a lot of it was eaten, but the kohen got the chazav v'shaik, got those two portions. Now, why doesn't Rashi mention the shalmei simcha? Shalmei simcha was also brought as a joyous part of a mitzvah to have meat. And so you would bring an extra korban called a peace offering for joy. And why doesn't Rashi mention that? So the commentaries here talk about the fact that if you have any other sacrifices that you're bringing, let's say you pledged a sacrifice in Shvat, in the month of January, and you brought it on Pesach, you would possibly not be obligated to bring a shalmei simcha, a shlamim, a peace offering for joy, because you brought a shlamim, you promised a shlamim in January, and you brought it now on Pesach, and you're having the meat. So you're enjoying the meat on Yom Tov. You fulfilled the mitzvah of shalmei simcha, of the joy, simchas Yom Tov, of having extra meat. You brought it with another korban. You don't have to bring a special. Now that korban that you're bringing, that's actually brought by the mishmar of that week, because it's a neder. You happen to be using it to fulfill your mitzvah of the holiday. So you're fulfilling your mitzvah of the holiday, simcha, joy during the holiday, but it's not called a sacrifice that's specifically connected to the holiday. And therefore, only the mishmar that it was their week, they brought it. But you actually could fulfill your mitzvah. And that could be why Rashi doesn't mention Shalmei Simcha. Now, of course, this is subject to a debate. Commentaries do debate if you do, can you really get away without bringing any Shalmei Simcha, or do you at least have to bring one during the holiday? So if you have to bring one, then it's still a question on Rashi. So the commentaries do debate. The later commentaries have a big debate about this. Can you really be Yotze without bringing any Shalmei Simcha, or do you at least have to bring one? So anyway, that's something that the commentaries discuss. But Rashi doesn't mention the Shalmei Simcha, believe it or not, and that could be the reason why he doesn't mention it. Now, the next Gemara brings a brisa. Tanu Rabbanan. One second. Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis taught in a brisa. Minayin shekol hamishmaris shavos be'emurei haragolim. How do we know that all the mishmaris, all the watches, are equal when it comes to the emurim, these discussed distributions of the sacrifices that are connected to the holiday? How do we know that all the mishmaris are equal? Talmud Loimar, because the pasuk says, "Uva v'chol abas nafshay," and he comes whenever his soul desires. Avas is from the word taiva. Whenever his soul desires, v'sheres, and he serves, and the pasuk continues that he can come whenever he wants. And what does the pasuk continue? Let me pull up the pasuk over here. Uva b'chal abas nafshay, to the place that Hashem chose. V'sheres b'shem Hashem alekov, and he serves in the name of Hashem, his God. Like all his brothers, the Leviim, that stand there before Hashem. So the pasuk actually says the word Levi, and Rashi tells us that there are 24 places where it says Levi, but it really refers to Kohen. In other words, the Kohen is from the Levi tribe. So sometimes it uses the word Levi because the Kohens are from the Levi tribes, even though it's not the whole tribe, it's only referring to the Kohanim part of the Levi tribe. Now it says that none of the mishmaros, none of these groups of Kohanim can stop. If you want to come, you are eligible to do the service. And if you're eligible to do the service, what happens automatically? When you're eligible to serve in the Beis HaMikdash and bring that sacrifice, then automatically you're eligible to partake of the food, of the distribution of that sacrifice's food portion, because it says hamakriv oisa loisia. The person who brings it or has the ability to bring it, he gets a portion of the food of that sacrifice. So not just the food, I should say, even it applies also to the burnt offering, where it's not food, it's a hide that you're getting. So it's not just, I shouldn't use the word food, I should use the distributed part. Anyone that's able to serve is eligible to get the portion that's distributed to the Kohanim. And so the verse says he can come in Vesheres and he serves. And naturally, you understand from there that it means he gets a portion of it. Now, he gets a portion of whatever's distributed. Now, you might ask, even the rest of the year, the rest of the days of the year, Cain should be the same thing. Let him enjoy whenever he comes. He can always enjoy working in the Beis HaMikdash. The pasuk says, Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, Me'achad she'arecha, from one of your gates. And the Gemara understands that lo yamarti, I did not say this, Ela b'shah shekol Yisrael nichnasin b'shar echad, that we're translating me'achad sha'arecha as if it said bi'achad sha'arecha with a base instead of a mem. And what that would mean is that the time that you're eligible to serve in the Beis Hamikdash and bring all of the sacrifices
for other people.
And bring all of the sacrifices. When is that time that you're eligible? It's only when all the Yidden, lo yamarti, I didn't say this, ela b'shah, only at a time, shekol Yisrael nichnasin, that all the Yidden enter b'shar echad, in one gate, which means they go to one city, and that is Yerushalayim. When do all the Yidden come to one city? This is in the holidays. So when are you eligible that b'chuva b'chol avas nafshay, that he could do v'sheres, he could serve? When does that apply, that he's allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash? That applies during the three holidays, the three major holidays. He's eligible to come, and all the Yidden come and enter in one gate, meaning they come to one city, and they're being oila regel, they're doing the pilgrimage. So you would be eligible to serve. All Kayanim are eligible to serve in the Beis Hamikdash. And naturally, if they're eligible to serve, they're eligible to partake of the portions that are distributed. And what's interesting here is that if you just think about this Gemara, the Gemara understood the Mishnah to mean that they're shavais, they're equal in the distribution of the emurei haragolim, in the distribution of the emurim, of those portions that are distributed of the holidays. The mishmaros are eligible for them. Now, there is another way of understanding it, that they're eligible to do the work with the sacrifices. In other words, is the Mishnah telling us about the distribution, or is it telling us about the work in the Beis Hamikdash, that they're eligible to do the work? And seemingly, the Gemara seems to understand it, that the Mishnah is specifically telling us that they're eligible in the distributions of the Beis Hamikdash, and they're all equal be'emurei haragolim, in the distribution of the sacrifices of the regalim. And that's why the Gemara asks, distribution of the sacrifices, you're calling emurim? Emurim is what's given on the Beis on the Mizbeach. That's not what's distributed. You can't say that the Kayanim that have come, they're eligible for the emurim. Emurim are what's brought on the altar. Now, if you learn the Mishnah differently, it wouldn't be a question. The Gemara's question wouldn't apply. Imagine if you learn the Mishnah to mean 3 times a year, all the mishmaros are equal to do the service for the emurim, the items, the organs that are brought on the Mizbeach. All the Kayanim are eligible to serve and bring those sacrifices. Then the Gemara wouldn't have a question. We're talking about the emurim that are on the Mizbeach. That's the typical word of emurim. But the Gemara doesn't understand it that way. The Gemara understands the Mishnah to mean that it's specifically referring to the distribution of the Kayanim, what's distributed to them. And then the Gemara has a question: distributed to the Kayanim, and you're calling it emurim? Emurim is something that's brought on the Mizbeach. That's not something you distribute. And the Gemara answers, well, here we're using the word emurim a little different than we normally use it, or very different than we normally use it, but it means it refers to what was stated about the regalim that was distributed to the Kayanim. That's what we mean by saying emurim. So it is interesting that the Gemara understands it that way. And the commentaries struggle to figure out, why does the Gemara understand it, that it's not just talking about the Kayanim working in the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara understands it to mean that it's all about the distribution rather than the working in the Beis Hamikdash. Now, there is a little question over here. The pasuk that talks about this, that Gemara brings to say, you know what it refers to? You know, when you're allowed to serve in the Beis Hamikdash and eat and to get the distribution, you're able to get the distribution on the holidays. Why? Because it says me'achad sha'arecha, which we are explaining to mean bi'achad sha'arecha, when all the Yidden come. That's when you can have a portion of the distribution, and which means you're allowed to serve and you're allowed to get a portion. Now, if you think about the reading of that pasuk, those psukim, if you just think about the translation of them, what are they really referring to? They're referring to a kohen, at least the Gemara explains it this way in another place, that if a kohen wants to bring a sacrifice on his own, is he allowed to come to the Beis Hamikdash and bring it? He decides one day, I want to bring a shlomim, a peace offering. I just won the lottery, and I want to go and celebrate. I want to bring a sacrifice, a shlomim, whatever it is. And he goes to the Beis Hamikdash, and he brings
a taida.
Taida, right? He brings a few. He won the lottery. He can bring a few sacrifices. He brings an oila. He brings a shlamim. He brings a taida. He gets the works. He does the whole package. So he, so he goes to the Beis Hamikdash and he brings a number of sacrifices. Is he allowed to do the service with those sacrifices? It's not a holiday, and it's not his week. His week is some other week at a different time. It's some other mishmar. It's a different group of kayanim working in the Beis Hamikdash. And he says, listen, I want to participate. Is he allowed to? So the simple meaning of this pasuk, at least the way the Gemara understands it in another place, is that he can come whenever he wants and bring his sacrifice. He can't go and bring someone else's. Some other guy pops in over there. He can go and say, oh, I'm working here today. I can bring yours also. No, but he can bring his own sacrifice. He's allowed to bring, and he does the service with it, and he also partakes of it. Now, that's what the pasuk means. He comes whenever he wants, and he can do the service. If he's bringing his sacrifice, he can come whenever he wants, and he can bring it. And that's what the pasuk really means. So how is our Gemara learning that it means on the holidays all the kayanim can come? That's not what the pasuk is talking about. The pasuk is talking about he can come when he wants and bring his sacrifice. It's not talking about you can go and bring all the other people's sacrifices on holidays. So the commentaries mention that really there's 2 points of this pasuk, and there's 2 extra statements in the pasuk. One is that v'sheres, he could go and serve, and that's referring to the first point that the other Gemara mentioned, that other point that the Gemara mentions, that it's talking about he comes when he wants, and he can serve and bring his sacrifice. That's specifically that it says uva b'chal avas nafshay. It's he can come when he wants, and he can, and he can serve and bring the sacrifice. It's from that pasuk, from those words, not from Shevis. He comes and whenever he wants, and he can bring his sacrifice. But the pasuk also says bi'achad sha'arecha, which is extra. Me'achad sha'arecha. It says from one of the gates, and the fact that it says from one of the gates, that is an extra word, and that word me'achad sha'arecha teaches us that. Soon, we're gonna go soon. Me'achad sha'arecha means that one of the gates means that when every Yid is coming to one gate, which is referring to the 3 holidays. So you got the lesson that the simple meaning of the pasuk of B'chalavas Nafshi comes when he wants, and then the other meaning that it's talking about on holidays, all the kayanim are eligible to partake in the service and in the distribution of what's given out on the holiday. So it's really 2 lessons, 2 teachings that we're able to learn from these psukim, because there's extra wording in the psukim that could teach both laws. Okay, so that's the meaning of this. That's this little piece of Gemara. Now comes the next piece of Gemara. It talks about the lechem haponim, uvechiluk lechem haponim, in the division of the lechem haponim, the showbread. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught in a brisa. So what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said, especially
where are we?
When the bottom line of
days on the days
55b, the bottom line.
Got it.
So we're talking about, the Mishnah said that the lechem haponim, even though the showbread was not specifically connected to the holiday, it's really brought every single week. Nevertheless, all the mishmaros were eligible to partake of the distribution. Tanu Rabbana, the rabbis taught in a brisa. Minayin shekol hamishmaros, shavos. How do we know that all the mishmaros are equal? Bechiluk lechem apanim, in the division, in the distribution of the lechem apanim. And now we turn to page 56a, Talmud Leimar, because the pasuk tells us chelek kechelek yochelu, that it says in that same pasuk about that the sheres, that the koyanim come and do this on the holidays. They could do the service, and chelek kechelek yochelu, they portion like portion they eat. What does that mean? So the Gemara understands it to mean kechelek avoida, just like the mishmaros have a portion in doing the service of the holidays, kach chelek achila also is a portion, is they get a portion, a part of the achila, of the eating. So it doesn't clearly spell out in the pasuk that all the koyanim get a portion of the lechem apanim. The pasuk doesn't say that, but we're going to expound on the verse and come up with that meaning. What does the pasuk say? It's a little poetic. The pasuk uses words chelek kechelek yechelu, portion like portion they eat. What exactly does that mean? So the Gemara says it means like the portion, like they get a portion of doing the service. They also get a portion of the eating, in the eating. Umay achila, what eating are we referring to? Ilema karbanos, if you want to say they get a portion of the sacrifices, hasam nafka, mehasam nafka, the idea that they get a portion of the sacrifice to eat is obvious. You don't need a pasuk to come and tell me chelek kechelek yechelu. You don't need that. We know if whoever brings the sacrifice gets a portion. La kayin, mehasam nafka, it's learned from over there. It's derived from over there where it says la kayin amakriv oisa loistia, that to the kayin that brings it, to him he gets it. Meaning anyone that's eligible to do the service is eligible to partake of the portion of that korban, of that sacrifice. So what are we using? What do we need this verse? That there's some eating that's similar to doing the service. That's just like everyone's eligible to do the service. Everyone's eligible in some item that's called achila. We don't need a pasuk to tell us that they can eat the sacrifices that they bring. That's obvious. That's known. It's an automatic rule in kudshim. Whoever brings it gets to eat it. So Ella, rather, it must be telling us about something extra. What is that something extra that has to do with eating? That's the lechem hapanim. That refers to the lechem hapanim, the showbread, that would be eligible to all the koyanim that come for the holiday to celebrate. They're going to be eligible to eat to partake, get a portion of this lechem hapanim. And I mentioned earlier, what would the reason be logically? In other words, what's the reason behind this law? The Gemara doesn't say a reason. The Gemara says it learns it out from an extra word in the pasuk. But I mentioned that the Radvaz understands that the reason behind this is based on another Gemara that says that when you had a little part of the lechem hapanim, you would feel fully satisfied. So this would be an understanding of why Hashem gives all the koyanim a portion of the lechem hapanim, because they're all going to get satisfied no matter how little they eat or how much they have of it. They're all going to they're going to get part of this miracle. And I guess you could say that they even get a bigger part of the miracle if you divide it among all the koyanim, because then they're eating even less and they're still getting fully satisfied. Raz doesn't mention that, but the point is that they all get a portion. The Gemara here is saying that they all get a portion of this lechem hapanim, this showbread, and it's learned from this pasuk chelek kechelek yechelu. Now the Gemara asks, Yachol af b'chayvais habois shalei machmas haregel beregel. Maybe they should also get a portion in all of the sacrifices that are coming that are not specifically connected to the holiday. They should get a portion of those when they're brought on the holiday, and everyone should get a portion of them. And that's what the pasuk is including, that it's adding that everyone gets a portion, gets to partake of that. Talmud Laimar, the pasuk says no. Levad mimkarav ala avos, besides that which was sold by the patriarchs, or by the by the fathers. And what does that mean? That besides that, that's what you can give to everyone. But that stuff you can't give to everyone. Whatever was sold by the avos, that is divided up. That's something that's each mishmar gets their portion, and you can't share it. You don't share it with another mishmar. That's not shared. That's every group gets their part of that. Each group gets their own time, and you don't get to share that with the entire family of Kayanim. Now, what does this mean? Besides what was sold by the avos, ma machru ha'avos, what did the avos? It doesn't mean the patriarchs Avram, Yitzchok, Yaakov. It means the patriarchs Shmuel Hanavi and David HaMelech. They made the division into the 24 groups, which we did learn in another Masechta that we had learned about how initially there were only 8 families of Kayanim and ultimately turned into 24. I think it was 8, then 16, and then 24. So what was it that was divided by these 24 groups? Shmuel Hanavi and David HaMelech divided the Kayanim into 24 groups. What did they sell? Ma machru ha'avos. What did these avos sell to each other? Zelozeh. Ani b'shabbati v'yata b'shabbatcha. I sell my portion, my week. I have my week, and you have your week, and we do not all do the service together. So what they basically sold was that they would only have a week they would have their week that was solely theirs and not the others. And so that was what was sold in the time of the avos, meaning that Shmuel Hanavi and David HaMelech divided it up this way, and that was what the Torah is referring to. It's interesting because the Torah says Levad mimkarav ala avos. It refers to what was sold by the avos in the Torah. Now the Torah was written well before David HaMelech came around, or Shmuel Hanavi, but the Torah says what was divided by the avos. Now the Torah is referring to that was something that you can't mess with. That was something that's set up, that you don't divide, that you don't mix with those, and you don't include those type of sacrifices to give to everyone when they come for the holiday. No, that's for each individual mishmar, each individual watching got their week, and that goes to the week that the holiday falls on. That week's mishmar, that they get those sacrifices. However, the lechem hapanim, that is a special law that goes to everyone, and that's based on this pasuk chelek kechelek yechelu, that they get something that's specifically eaten. Chelek kechelek yechelu, that the only thing left is to eat it, and that was basically the lechem hapanim. That refers to the showbread, because the showbread was something where they already brought it itself was not brought on the altar, and the work that was done with it, some of it was already done, which is that they would set it up and put it on the seder, masader it on the table. It would be placed on the shulchan of the gold-plated table, and then the bread would be eaten. Did they have to bring the bread on the altar, even a portion of it? No. The bread was fully eaten by the Kayanim. They did actually bring the bazichin, which was the spoon of frankincense. That was the levina that was brought on the altar. But the actual bread, only all that was really done with it was removing it from the table and distributing it to eat. So that is something that we're calling achila. That's something that's unique, that it's only that what's left to do with it is the achila. That's chelek kechelek yechelu. We're going to divide that. That's going to be divided amongst all the kayanim of all the families. They're going to get a portion of the lechem hapanim. We're going to stop here. Sei gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Take care, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.